There's always parts of a kitchen, especially in a renovation. I guess I ask my clients what they hate about their kitchen that they've got. And it will be, there's not enough bench space, there's not enough pantry space, it's too dark, it's hard to get around, the oven's in the wrong spot, the sink's in the wrong spot. All these things are what we want to improve. The layout and the flow of a kitchen is really important, and there tends to be one spot in the kitchen that becomes a bit of a bottleneck, where everyone's moving in and out all the time, and it can be a bit of a bone of contention for some people. So really focusing on that area and giving it the most space you can without compromising the design and the storage space. There's a bit of a fine line between being too much and not enough. It really comes down to who's using the space and how and when. In a kitchen renovation where you're considering ripping it all out and starting from scratch, thinking about your layout is really important. You don't want to go backwards, but there are some pretty big things to a renovation too. So you've got to consider what type of flooring you have. If your house is on a concrete slab and your sink is currently in your island and you want to shift it to your window, is that possible? It's going to cost a little bit more money. You're going to have to get a concrete cutter in to chase the floor out, to put the waste in the right spot. There's a lot of consideration around those things that people don't put a lot of money value on so much, but it can surprise them at the cost. So that's a pretty big consideration.
So would another important thing be to work out whether what you're using your kitchen for, whether it's just cooking or are you entertaining in it, or is it flowing into your dining room?
When designing a kitchen for clients, we have a big conversation around how the space will be used. If clients are entertainers and have 20, 30 people in their homes over a weekend or an event, it's important that the kitchen functions for that. If you've got children that do their homework at the bench, using a material on the bench that's hardy and easy to clean and is not going to mark. If you're a great cook, there are, new bench tops and things around now that you can cut straight on and put hot pots straight on. So it really is about how the kitchen's going to be used. The way a kitchen's going to be used is a big deal. It has a huge impact on the end result. In a smaller home, you might need to incorporate your laundry into your kitchen, for example. So that sort of needs to tie in neatly and tucked away, sort of integrated, so that it's there, it's useful, but it's not on display. During my initial consultation with clients, trying to get the big boxes to tick, that's a big one. So a client might say, I need more pantry space. I've got teenage kids in this house that eat everything all day long and we just never have enough space for our big shops. So, that sort of thing would be a must-have. Someone that has smaller children, they might need a space where they can sit to eat their meals or that sort of thing.
So would you say when you are thinking of your kitchen, do you need to pick out the key areas first and then fit the other things in around it? So obviously if you're cooking for a family, it needs to be an efficient workspace so you can do it efficiently.
Generally, when you're cooking for a family, and the layout of the kitchen is really important, you should be able to use your cooktop and somebody else use the fridge without interrupting the flow of the cooktop and the sink. There's a lot of little tips like that make working in a kitchen with more than one person great. But if you don't think about it, that can become a real sticking point. And, we want to make sure that you get the best out of your renovation and you don't have any regrets. So thinking about those sorts of things, who's using the kitchen and when, if mum and dad are cooking and you've got the kids in and out of the fridge, making sure that they're not interfering with the workspace. So distances between cooktops and islands, fridges and islands, they play a huge part. And thinking about that is really important. So in designing a kitchen, it's usually where I start, talking about the layout and the appliances. So making sure that they're in the right space, there's plenty of walk space between them. If you're having one big bowl and a small bowl, or one bowl and a separate bowl somewhere else, really does come down to who's using the kitchen and how. If you've got, if mum and dad are cooking in the kitchen and the kids are all around, is there a space for them to sort of sit against the island or somewhere for them to be a part of what's going on but not in the way? Other things would be the positioning of your appliances. So if the kitchen is a one-person kitchen, you might have an oven and a microwave, you'll have your cooktop and your fridge. Where they are laid out is really important. You don't want to have to wear roller skates around your kitchen to get to where you need to be. Everything should be in a fairly good distance. Space is expensive. Wasted space is even more expensive. So really what you want to do is make the use of all of the available space. And there are some great products and things around now that do exactly that. They may cost a little more, but they are definitely worth it because you're using all of the available space in the kitchen. So in a renovation, obviously you're working with the space you have, unless you're extending or building new where the same rules apply, but in a renovation you would need to make the most of the available space. So clever storage solutions, wall cupboards, kitchen real estate is expensive, and if you're not using the space well, then it's money lost. You just need to make the most of the available space you have.
So obviously in a renovation, storage is premium. So how do we work around that, the corners?
Making use of all of the space in your kitchen is really important. And there's always those hard to reach areas. We always have these corners, which are a necessary evil, but there are lots of different appliances and mechanisms you can put in these cabinets to make them more user-friendly and more accessible. We're always looking to improve your old kitchen. So those dead spaces that have always been a bone of contention, having to get on your knees to get in there to get things out, we want to alleviate that. We want to make sure that those cabinets are still used and the space is still used, but it's used in a more ergonomic way, more easy access.
The other thing is overhead cupboards above the fridge, all those sorts of spaces. Is there any tips on that?
So overhead cupboards are great. They're often quite hard to reach. So they're the types of places where you'd put things you don't use all that often, or put things that you don't want your children getting to, something a little bit higher up. Being of the shorter variety, having a cupboard door that when you open it stays where you put it, rather than having to reach up to try and get it and pull it back down. There's lots of little considerations to make that, again, make the end result more enjoyable for everybody, and it's a good investment for your home and your lifestyle. So when we're renovating a kitchen, we're definitely looking to improve on what you've had before. So most of us would have lived in a kitchen that has 100 cupboard doors in it, which are great, you get a lot in them, but at the end of the day, they're quite hard to use. So when I'm designing a kitchen for clients, I'll always try and put as many drawers in as possible. Full extension drawers, so you don't have to fish around the back to look for the things you're after. They come out to meet you. It's ergonomic and it's a really good use of space. With drawers, I generally talk to clients about what they're going to put in there, and we make those drawers suitable for those things. Different heights of drawers. Again, you might have a great big stock pot that you definitely want in your drawer, but you need to make sure that drawer is deep enough to house that. There's also other things you can do for your drawers, organisers, non-slip mats, all those sorts of things that just keep your kitchen looking nice and easy to use. There's a couple of key points around drawers. They should always be full extension and they should always be soft close. They don't necessarily have to have handles, they don't necessarily have to be pushed to open, but the soft close function, it really shouldn't actually be an option. It should come standard with every kitchen, and I think today it generally does.
To be fair, a soft close function not only protects your drawer fronts or your cabinetry, but it also protects what's inside.
So a soft close drawer, if you have all your crockery, which is heavy, in a drawer that's soft close, they don't bang around and they don't move. So it's likely to last a lot longer than it would if it was flying around in a drawer that doesn't have soft close. So there's also some advantages to having soft close drawers when you have a young family. It's quite often hard to keep your toddlers out of the drawers. With the soft close, it's just that little bit harder for them to open. And if they do manage to get it open, they're not going to get their fingers jammed in the top because it's soft close. The pedal bin in the corner of the kitchen is a bit of a thing of the past. We all know what they look like. They overflow, they look manky after a while. So having a bin that's concealed in your cabinetry is certainly the way to go. It's something that you shouldn't overlook, and it should be planned into your kitchen quite early on in the piece. They don't always have to be together. You could have your landfill and your compost bin together and have a bigger recycling bin in a different location in the kitchen that's more accessible to everybody, for your guests, for your glass and plastics and things. So there are a couple of locations for your rubbish bins in your kitchen. Placement of your waste bins is really important. Having your refuse or your landfill waste with your green waste is quite important, but it should be where you're prepping. So if you're working between your sink and your cooktop, that bin should really be in there amongst those cabinetry. And it comes down to the space you've got. You can either have cabinets or bins that pull out from underneath your bench, which are great, really accessible. you don't always have room for that. So having those sorts of things built into the cabinetry under your sink is still acceptable. And another part of the kitchen that's more accessible for everybody, including guests, for wine bottles and beer bottles and things like that.
Is there, obviously there's options for bins where you can have multiple buckets in the same unit. Is that a good idea?
With the bins, I generally talk to clients about how they use their waste and how much waste they produce as a family. So dealing with household waste is pretty important. We have separate bins for separate things. So you'll have one bin for your landfill waste, which is what we're trying to sort of decrease. So having a smaller bin encourages you to use less. Having a big recycling bin is really important, encourages you to recycle. Household waste management is a pretty big topic, and it's something you really need to consider early on in your kitchen design. It's all about how many people are in your home and how you deal with that household waste. We're using less plastic and we're recycling more of it. So having a decent sized recycling bin that can fit a family's worth of recycling for 2 or 3 days is a must. The recycling bin is a pretty important bin for the house, making sure that you're encouraging yourselves and your family to recycle and do what's right and get it into the right bins. So our green waste or our compostable waste can be dealt with in 2 ways. You can either have a waste disposal unit, which alleviates the need to have a compost bin, or you're a composter, which you add your bin and you take it out and you feed your chooks or you do what you do with them. The idea is to reduce this. So having a smaller bin kind of encourages you to use less, but it also needs to be enough for a family. What you don't want to do is have a big bin that takes 3 or 4 days to fill, because that's when things start to get a bit yuck. So if you have a bin that's, a decent size but is able to be disposed of within 2 or 3 days, that is the better option. We don't have reusable shopping bags anymore, so having a bin that's easy to clean is really important. You can buy the eco bin bags that are compostable, which is great. You don't have to. You can put them straight into your bin so long as they're easy to clean. If you want to use the recyclable bags, that's great. There isn't any need for them. The rubbish bins that are out today can be removed from their case, they can be washed in the sink, sometimes in the dishwasher even if they're not that big, put back into the space without the use for plastic bags.